And welcome everybody to Live at the Hive, Digital Marketing from the Trenches. I am your host, Dan Nedelko, and today we've got a very special guest on today, Stephen G. Pope from SGP Labs. Welcome, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here and help share as much knowledge as I can to help out whoever's listening.
Yeah, that'd be great. And special shout out to Stephen. We were just actually engaged in a flurry of emails back and forth at the 11th hour there. Not feeling well, a little bit under the weather. So I really appreciate you going the extra mile and joining us today.
Absolutely. The show must go on.
The show must go on. So it's interesting how I had been introduced to Stephen. It's a very 21st century way that I ran into your stuff. I was on TikTok. I follow a lot of marketing people, obviously, and technology. And you found your way into my For You page. And I started to obviously interact and then went through the whole thing, found you've got a digital masters community as well as your agency. So I was always fascinated. I've been fascinated. I love automations. I love technology and what we can do with it. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today for everybody out there, is why I think Stephen would also be a huge advocate, I'm going to guess, of automations. But Stephen, when you talk to people, that are maybe skeptical of automations, or do you find people are skeptical in general about automating processes?
I mean, there are people that are skeptical. I think you should be skeptical of automating things that shouldn't be automated, or automating things before you have a process to automate. So, I find that, and I think those are really valid concerns. Like I've gotten myself in all sorts of messes and wasted a bunch of time and kept myself doing certain things that I shouldn't be doing because I had automated those things. So technology is a great enabler, but it's also a restrictive force as well. I think that can happen whether you're doing content automation or marketing automation. I think there's a lot of technology that's sold to people as really just something that it sounds cool, and it is cool. So I think really good marketers should be skeptical of automation and technology in general, because marketing in itself is a really basic fundamental thing that has existed for a long time. Having said that, I'm a tech guy. I mean, I've spent my entire life building technology and solving problems that help save a lot of time and help you do more with less. And so, so I battle both sides, quite honestly. As an entrepreneur, it's like the core of what you're trying to do is solve someone's problem. And so if you're not achieving that goal, then something's wrong there, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that I like to tell both clients and team and people that we work with is automation is not there for automation's sake. It's there to help ease the heavy lifting. And we can't forget that the communication side of it is the most important. There's got to be nuance to it. You can't just hammer it and do it for the sake of doing it. One of the analogies I like to use is like, if you gave me a whole suite of carpentry tools, you do not want to see what the result's going to be, right? Because I'm no carpenter. But you put those in the hands of a master and beautiful things can happen.
And that's why, like, the first thing that I say to people in the automation group that I have is like, I try to slow people down. Like, because if you're just a tech guy and you're a tech nerd and you want to play around with it, go for it. Like, just have fun with it. But have your goals aligned. All that stuff needs to be, aligned before you start using automation.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of which, that's something that we definitely wanted to highlight here. This is your, I guess, your agency, sgplabs.com. Maybe you want to tell everybody just a little bit about what it is you do over there.
Yeah. So, I really help, companies, brands, create, repurpose, and distribute content to multiple social media platforms with as little of their time as possible. 1 to 2 hours of their time. And most of the time I'm working as a consultant to help them implement these things into their company. And then, with some exceptions, for some clients, we will do some of the work for them. But
Mhm.
primarily, we work as an agency or as a consultant to help you implement these things.
Very cool. Very cool. And then you've also got your digital masters community. Maybe you can. I actually very much enjoy the community. It's full of great
Awesome.
value. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm really glad I'm a part of it. But maybe you can just tell everybody a little bit about what's involved in digital masters.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to be changing the name to just like build your content machine, because that's ultimately the core of what's going on in there. Is really just like just providing some of the basic tools that I use in my daily basis to help people do what I do with my one-on-one clients. Is so it's just like basic tools around Airtable and automations and Zapier that help you build out your content machine.
That was actually really what tweaked me was when I was watching your TikToks, and I guess this just goes to show you. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. Obviously, you've got a substantial following over there on TikTok with great engagement. Is how that content really works in your favor. I joined your community. I know it's an entry level subscription, but I get a lot of value out of it. And I think one of the favorite things I like about I'm in several marketing communities is more than just the information, because the information you've got is very valuable, right? But it's the community. It's being able to have a group of people you can turn to and say, "Look, I'm chewing on this. I'm having a problem here,"
Right.
and get that kind of that community help as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that was actually always something that I wanted to learn how to do at some point. Like I did kind of grow up as a introverted person. I wasn't like
Mhm.
I did grow a business and sold that business, but I never saw myself as a community leader. And
Mhm.
that was something that I really wanted to try to tackle, is like kind of learning how to get out of my own way and build community, bring people together, let them.
Mhm.
I mean, I see people in the community now kind of doing business and meeting with each other and doing that kind of stuff. So I think that is kind of the cool part of it. I think that's
Oh
what,
yeah.
like, yeah, like the Zaps and the Airtables, and that's all just like tangible stuff that you can grab when you get in there. But like, yeah, like the people and seeing those people come together, I didn't imagine it would get to where it is now.
Mhm.
And so it's been really cool to see. Like it's really an honor to be involved.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. We're big into community at Honeypot, and we've got a couple of different marketing communities as well. And it's very satisfying to even just to get feedback. When you help somebody, it's much more satisfying feeling rather than and this as a digital marketer. Sometimes you can get disconnected because you got this wall of tech and even social media, which is very much parasocial, right? Like you're 11,000, 12,000 followers on TikTok. I'll see you as one person, but there's not a relationship two-way there to a great
Right.
degree that the community helps foster for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Cause I mean,
yeah.
I always tell like businesses, you'd much rather have like 20 or 30 people that are always talking about you,
Hmm.
that really love you, than, 20,000 followers, whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, this is just down a side rabbit hole. When we work with local businesses, that are geographically limited, right? Um, Obviously, you would want to have 20,000 engaged followers, but if you had 1,000 engaged followers in your exact region that are your advocates, that's really powerful. It can
Well,
really
oh
affect your
yeah.
business too.
Yeah. And then, like, depending, like depending on what kind of business you are, like, how many clients do you really need to
Yeah.
reach the goals that you want? It's like, it's people
Mhm.
usually have, like, they get caught up in likes, comments, and followers and whatnot.
Mhm.
And often the case, that's not actually what you need for your business to grow.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's go back down into automations. I think one of the first places I like to start is when we talk about automations in our projects, and we do a lot, everything from simple notifications in Slack, so we can stay on top of things, to much more complex automations that may require two or three platforms to stitch together. Um, what's the starting point? You kind of mentioned it before. What we like to do and what I like to do is actually, even if it's on the back of a napkin, is actually sketch it out, like what
Oh,
you're
sure.
trying to get to.
Yeah. First things first is for me is like, what's your goal?
Mhm.
And what's your goal? And have you done this manually before? And
Mhm.
if you're doing it manually, have you been doing it manually consistent enough so that you know it's something that you want to codify? Because I've been
Mhm.
building technology for my whole life. I mean, I can't tell you how many projects where people build technology and it's just like it doesn't really help at all. So yeah, it's like
Yeah.
number one, what's your goals? What are the biggest pain points? Put those at the top, prioritize properly, move those things to the top, and then you sketch it out, build out your workflow, and then just start implementing the little pieces of it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that it's like, I mean, but what's funny about that is that you could apply that to any project. It's not
Mhm.
regardless of whether that's automation or anything. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And as a software developer by trade, I like to call it, and an engineer as well in a previous life, it's the project plan and those goals, and getting to each one of your your MVP, versus I've been on projects in the past that just go in 30 different directions, and all of a sudden you've got this hulking beast sitting in the corner that no one quite understands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and on a total side note, I've been running into so many like past engineers that have become marketers. I wonder what the underlying trend is there.
It's pretty funny. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I founded a startup shortly after the dot-com bubble burst back in the day. Mainly because while I was in university, I went to the University of Waterloo, so everybody was high-fiving the entire time, right? So we're all like, "We're set, man. We're gonna make like tons of money when we graduate." And it was like, honestly, it was 2 months before graduation that the bubble burst, and
That's just
the
like
world.
me. I was the same
Yeah.
timing.
Okay, so we're both equally getting up there in age, eh? um, but yeah, so I was in a startup. We were doing really well. We had very cool technologies, very useful, and I realized that the sales and marketing teams that we had could not get their heads around this. They weren't able to explain it. The value was, and then I went into the dark side of what we called technical sales at the time, and then it became marketing and digital marketing, and that's how I ended up with Honeypot Marketing. And
Nice.
so, yeah, it was a bit of trying to, uh, change the way I thought the industry was doing things improperly, if that makes sense, right? Where it's like there was the era of like guerrilla marketing and covert marketing, and people are trying to cheat each other. It kind of sounded like it felt that way, and our own sales and marketing team couldn't get the proper uh, direction, communications, all that stuff. So, I have a feeling that it's somewhat similar stories from other people from engineering backgrounds that get into the marketing side.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Cool. So, starting out, prioritize, set goals, write it out. The why, like, why are you trying to do this? And then, what are some of your go-to tools for automations? And maybe for people, obviously, if someone's getting started, join Steven's community, build the content machine. But what are some tips you have for people looking to implement their own? And what are some of your favorite automation platforms?
Yeah, I like Airtable as like a place to store the data because it's
Hmm.
like it's like a structured, you know, spreadsheet, but
Hmm.
essentially on steroids. And so it has the makings of some automation in there.
Hmm.
And there actually are automations you can add in there. They're a little bit limited, but I think that's a great place you can create different views and like look at the data in different ways and kind of segment it and group it. And you can create all these different fields. So that's a
Hmm.
great place to like have as like your data store.
Hmm.
And then Zapier is great. There's a bunch of, I mean, people have been like messaging me on uh, uh, on TikTok and say, have you checked this one out? Have you checked it? There's also Integromat, which became Make.
Yep.
Um, and then there's another one. I think it's like people have said, have you checked out? It's like Patty or something like that. I can't remember the name of it right off the bat, but I guess it's like, so I mean, so Airtable, Google Drive, it's like Airtable is great for like structured data. Google Drive is good for data files. Zapier is
Mhm.
good for just gluing it all together. And those would be my favorites
Mhm.
right now. Like my automation is like really specific right now.
Mhm.
It's like it's all around like content automation and helping you build out a system that really allows you to distribute a lot of content to a lot of different places, and without a lot of your time or energy. Um, but I mean, I see people doing all sorts of creative stuff like with Google Sheets and all of these different things. And I think that's another thing that you got to map out too, is like you get your flow, and then you're going to have your own budget. You know,
Mhm.
some people can spend $100 a month on Zapier and it's like no big deal. And then other people is like, wow, that's a lot of money. So, you know, you got to think through the tooling as well, and like what's going to solve the problem. Cause like Zapier or Zapier, I don't know, people call it different things.
Yeah.
Uh, they all, you know, it's like they all kind of come at the problem slightly different. And like
Mhm.
there might be some integration that you need that one doesn't have. So like once you map it all out, then you got to go make sure like the actual features that you need to implement it are on a given platform.
Yeah, for sure. I actually had so my team at Honeypot will know this about me. I am if something anybody's repeating anything like 3 or more times in 1 week, it's like we're automating something here. So I've got a and I've tried to say Zapier. I try to, and then I'm like, no, you know, for many, many years I've been using Zapier, and it's kind of just ingrained in my brain. And
Yeah,
they try to,
I don't know why. Like I've always said Zapier, but
yeah,
somehow something's creeping in, and I've been saying Zapier lately. And
yeah,
now
yeah.
I'm
Maybe
confused. Now when I say it, I don't know which one should come out.
I don't know why I always called it Zapier because you technically it's a Zap. So anyhow,
Yeah.
this is one of those things. It's there was a fun debate about SEMrush versus SEMrush, the SEO and digital marketing platform as well. And I refuse. I call it SEMrush. I can't say SEMrush. But anyways, yeah. So you know, one of the things I totally agree with you talking about. A big part of what I work on is Martech stack development, right? For larger projects where you're, you know, stitching together Dynamics 365, say an active campaign, and you've got to move data, and moving data and that automation can be integral to a successful, say, account-based marketing program, for example. But one of the things I love about Zapier is it's very full featured once you get used to how some of that tooling works.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, even quite simply, you know, small notifications can be a lifesaver, right?
Yeah.
You know, someone sent you a message to your TikTok inbox, for example, and send that to Slack. That's probably a fictitious one because I don't think that connection exists. But anyhow,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like, and that's why like knowing what the pain points are is the important part, because right, it's like um it's not always the big complicated thing that you do that's the most valuable. You know, like
mhm.
just, you know, some of the basic stuff that I do around just creating folders and linking them and all that kind of stuff is some of the most valuable stuff, because it's just it's all the things that are the biggest pain in the, like the rocks in your shoe. Like if you won't go
Mhm.
hiking if you've got a rock in your shoe, and
Yeah.
you got to get the rock out, and then you got to get the next rock out, and you just got to keep focused on the things that are actually in your way.
Mhm.
Otherwise you really couldn't, you can go down all these different rabbit holes and not, you might have a lot of fun building it, but
Yep. But then, yeah, is it busy work at that point, right?
yeah.
Totally. I love the analogy that you've got about hiking with a rock in your shoe, because until you get that rock out, it's not the pain's not going to go away. We've
Yeah,
got
and with content marketing, that's like, it's so, there's so many little, especially when you start to try to create a bunch of content and push it all over the place.
mhm.
There's a lot of rocks.
Yeah, yes, there is. We're going to get to that in a second. I'd love to go through the content machine that you've created. I believe you're repurposing your content to several other platforms. Do you do like a TikTok to YouTube Shorts?
I have, I'm not doing it right now,
Hmm.
partly because of like, partly just around like actually platform specific things. And I think this is another just good reminder, is like, just because you can doesn't mean you have to.
Hmm.
Like there's some questions on like some debates on how YouTube Shorts are best used, whether
Hmm.
they hurt your channel, help your channel, whether you should be pushing them to a separate channel that's kind of just referencing your main channel. Because you got to think like YouTube in general it's an intent-based platform. Most people right now are going there for long form content. And so just using the feature, like YouTube itself isn't very clear about the feature. And so like if you're trying to build a YouTube channel, you want to be pretty careful about how you push some of that content there. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. It might not help your channel if you're pushing short form video content there that maybe the people that want long form content don't want. It could actually backfire. So like YouTube is not TikTok. So I'm not saying you shouldn't. There are people that are doing it successfully, but the content's got to align, right? So like, as much as the people just want to push content everywhere, it all has to come down to strategy and quality and purpose.
I love that point, because that's something we really try to reinforce with our clients, because there's quite often this notion that you're effectively spamming your social channels and broadcasting and not engaging, and all the things that we all know that can happen. I love the intentionality, right? Is, intentionally on TikTok, I'm using it as a teaser that potentially leads to long form YouTube content where I can go in depth. And that's that strategic kind of view of your content. I am really interested to know, Armando's got a great comment here. Pre-built IFTTTs, lifesaver sometimes. IFTTT is super cool, especially with the IoT, stuff that they've got pre-built in there.
Yeah, no, I know that. I know of that tool. I haven't used it as much, but I know that's a great tool as well.
Yeah, it's a really cool, and it's a little bit. It's not that it does kind of a lot of the automations, but it does a lot of like IoT home stuff, like Philips Hue with your Google Assistant or Alexa and things like that. So it's a very cool, so slightly different purpose, but a great way to automate your own life too.
Yeah,
in those scenarios. So what are some of the automations that you use? Because you're a content creator, as well as an influencer, as well as having your agency. So what does your content creation flow look like? And I think we have a lot of people that are in social media management and, content creation. So what's your content strategy? How do you automate that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. And sometimes we get caught up on terms, but when I think of content strategy, that for me, that means like, who's your team? What's your point of view? How are you creating content? How are you post-producing it? How are you distributing it? How are you gathering analytics? So, I mean, like my basic workflow looks like, I do some planning on Friday, and I try to keep things, instead of like, I kind of stopped collecting ideas of things I want to talk about. And I just kind of map in what people are actually asking me.
Okay.
And trying to keep the feedback loop real tight there. So my content strategy is to be as close to the action as possible, so that I'm not like just inventing things that people want. Like we all have things we know people should know, and those things should be things that you talk about. But we also get in. People can get into this. I'm going to say rut at this point, where it's just like, oh, I've got all these ideas, I'm going to pump them out and push them out to people. But that isn't always what people want. So I'm just listening to comments and pulling that in and trying to keep as close a pulse on that as possible. I do the planning. I'll usually do like a YouTube video. I do a live show, and I do a lot of guest appearances. That's where I'm actually able to pull a lot of the content from, because people are asking me questions. And so I know it's something that you're interested in hearing about specifically. And that way it's not just me like creating individual videos. And kind of, you can really stress yourself out trying to come up with too many content ideas and trying to like map out scripts and all this stuff. So I just get myself in positions where people are asking me questions. That's the best place to be. And like live shows are great for that. You got people in here, chatting and asking questions, providing comments. So that's the main strategy. And then from there, it's like either cutting those clips up, and then there's always the actual, face to camera kind of videos, which I think are effective as well, because the repurposed stuff has its place. It works well. but nothing quite replaces just like looking into the camera as well and just like giving a thought, showing something off,
Mhm.
documenting what you're doing. So, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. And it's just all the systems and processes I put in place just are designed to make that as like flawless as possible for myself.
Right. So, and I think that's brilliant because it is truly creating a social strategy based on what's actually happening, which is like the whole definition of the entire thing. Um, and that's really great advice. So you're getting your TikTok comments, and if you're on a podcast, I noticed you were on with, I think his name's Chris Bogue. I can't
Oh
Bogie.
yeah. Yeah. Chris Bug. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I watched that. I ran into that on LinkedIn, and so that was really great. So you're collecting comments from there as well, and then that defines your content schedule or
I'm
the
not like,
content you create. Yeah,
I'm not collecting comments from like a live show that I'm on.
oh,
Like
sure.
I'm not like literally like seeing what people are doing on your live show and like writing it down or anything.
Mm,
More like, if I'm on a podcast with you and you're asking me questions, or then I can like directly answer them. I can
gotcha.
record this as well, and I can cut that up into clips.
Mhm.
I can go on to go on to podcast, do the same thing with TikTok. People ask me a question as often as I can. I respond with a video instead of just like responding with text.
Mhm.
Um, so just
Cool.
responding to all that content, and then I've got comments coming in from YouTube as well. I mean, that's the context that and the grounding that I think most people are missing.
Mhm.
Because if you don't have that interaction, it's all just like uh, theoretical content creation.
Yeah, yeah. It's a whole world of assumptions, which marketers never make assumptions about
Yeah.
their audience.
Well, it's
For
very
sure.
easy to lose touch. I mean, I'll be honest,
Yeah.
especially the more I'm generalizing a little bit, but the more introverted you are and the more
Mhm.
technical you make it, the more removed you're going to become. Like a lot of the times, like
Mhm.
I have a tendency to say, like my engineering mind wants to say, "Oh, how can I remove myself from this?"
Mhm.
And
That's
by doing so, you remove all of the effectiveness of it.
right, right. Yeah, it is, and like you say, getting out of your own way, right? It's an important property. Um, in terms of the automation side, so your favorite platforms are Zapier, Airtable. Um, what's an example of an automation that really made an impact on your content creation, and maybe just like a high level, like how it where I know it's more complicated because the Content Machine, I'm a member of the community and I see the videos, but just from a high level, like what does the process look like, and that way people watching can maybe start to frame their own solutions and figure it out.
Yeah, probably one of the most helpful is just like an inbox for incoming content. So like if you're done with this live show and you have the recording, you could just drop it in an inbox, and then from there everything gets pulled in into the tracking system, into Zapier, into Google Drive. Folders are created, links are made so that you can find that content. It's indexed.
Mhm.
That's probably the most basic. It's really basic, right? It's not even that many steps, but
Yep.
that organizational piece is the framework and the ground is what's going to allow you to expand and customize and go from there. So like
Mhm.
it's so simple, but that's probably like one of the most important ones. And then communication reminders, reminding people that are keeping track of statuses,
Mhm.
and then using those links that we just created to like make it easy for other people to find these files. That's the core. That's one of the biggest core foundations, and it's super simple. Like I can just leave it at that as like,
Yeah. No, that makes total sense, especially, and this is, I think, anybody in marketing, digital marketing these days, you got more channels, you got more content, you got more um, cornerstone, long form, you're chopping it up. And yeah, I've seen Google Drives, even our own Google Drives at certain times, get just so far out of hand. And then try to go back, say, 6 months to find that. You had that great piece of content, maybe you want to repurpose it or reshoot it. And yeah, you can't find it because human beings are human beings. We're not as the automations will always keep the same structure as opposed to humans who, you'd have a different naming convention than I would have, no matter how much we try to agree on the convention, for example. Yeah.
yeah, without structure to some of that stuff, it always gets lost.
Hmm.
And the same even goes for just like I don't necessarily have automation around like keeping track of like other parts of my Google Drive, and I'm always like losing stuff in there. You know, it's like where did that image go for, you know, my headshot or something like that. You know, it's like you just start to lose that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I've got some of my favorite automations are actually just, you know, huge time savers. We've got some fairly significantly sized media clients, so we've got, you know, anywhere from 14 to 20 new pieces of content going out a day. So it's like in the sports media space. We have a whole team of writers, and then we have editors. We got a Zap that watches Google Drive for each author. As soon as a new document is put in there, the post is created with the title, with the excerpt, with the featured image, with the content set as
Nice.
draft, and the editor can just go in, and every day it's like, boom. And we don't have to teach writers how to get into WordPress because some of them don't know how, right? And then you have
And so
all these,
that's, oh, I see.
yeah,
That's automated through WordPress.
yeah, yeah.
What 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 is the I've had a couple people ask me. I think I looked something up at some point, but what is the automation you use to create like a post in WordPress? Is there
it, it,
something?
it's a Zap. Yeah, it's
Is
just,
it? Oh, okay.
yep. The limitation that Zapier has with WordPress is it does not handle custom post types. So if you have
Hmm.
you know, plugin that created a taxonomy, so some different type, but a standard post and a standard page are fully supported. So yeah, it just watches a Google Drive folder. As soon as the Google Drive folder gets the content in, you can pull out the title. They have to use the structure, right? Like title H1, heading 2, 3, 4, and then you can format it, send it over to the site. It will leave it in draft form, and then we can have a Slack message that notifies the editor that their content is ready for editing.
Nice.
Yeah, it saves. It actually saves also, you know, having say a dozen writers, people on the site taking up the server resources, and you know, it's much more efficient process. So, you know,
Love it. Love it.
yeah, it's actually not very complicated automation either. But like you
The
said,
simple ones are the best.
yeah, the simple
I
ones
mean,
are the best. Yeah.
it's funny, man. Like I actually like to just keep it as simple as possible. Now, I like
Mhm.
it's not like the simple ones are the best ones, and that's you could probably argue like outside even automation, it's like usually the most simple solutions to your life problems are the easiest ones to implement as well.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, keep it simple.
Yeah, for sure. One other last thing I think that's really important in the world of automations is, to your point about, it's not the complexity of it. How much repetition in that particular thing are you doing? If you've got a team of people doing something dozens of times a day, I would really take a hard look at how you can automate that, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it could be the simplest thing in the world. It could be like, yeah, posting a WordPress post, for example, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially because WordPress can be kind of sluggish,
Hmm.
you know, at least in my experience. Maybe you can really optimize it when somebody's going to the site, you can make it super fast. But like I've just noticed, like sometimes when I'm in the admin panel, like
Hmm.
sometimes you know it's just a little bit slow to load a page, and like all of those little annoyances, it's just like they just drag on you day after day after day, especially if you're like doing a ton of publishing, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And no, you're right. I think, especially when people start hammering post publishing that tend to have a database heavy life, and if you know, we have everything cached and optimized fully, but it can, like, if you have a whole bunch of people in the back end, on the front end, you know, depending on your server, if you don't have the resources, you're going to hurt the user experience on the other side of that. So that's definitely a concern as well. Definitely. Cool. All right, Stephen. Well, listen, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us today on Live at the Hive, especially given that you're under the weather. But, you know, thank you for enlightening everybody about the power of automations. And I would strongly encourage all of you, one, to follow Stephen on TikTok, and check out the, well, what is now the Digital Masters community, but maybe the soon to be renamed Content Machine
Yeah,
community. But
it's
thanks.
funny. Yeah, it's funny. Like like the messaging is always in motion, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I appreciate you having me on, Dan, and really appreciate you being in the community and supporting me and everyone else in there. And I'm looking forward to like just seeing where this goes and helping you out and seeing where things go. So I appreciate it. It's super honor to have it's been an honor to be on your show today.
Thanks a lot. All right, everybody. That's it for this episode of Live at the Hive Digital Marketing from the Trenches. We will see you next week. Same B time, same B channel. Peace.